A year after losing her daughter, a mother finds the most shocking clue that could bring her back on the autopsy table. This story will keep you glued to the screen from start to finish. Now press the like button below the video and focus on the story. The sound of the clock echoed in the silent amphitheater. At 6:30 in the morning, Paola Morales adjusted her glasses and took a deep breath before opening the steel drawer containing the body she was to examine that day. The cold routine of work was the only thing that kept her going. It had been exactly 1 year since her 13-year-old daughter Lucia had disappeared without a trace. 12 months of pain that did not diminish, but settled in her chest like an unbearable weight, reminding her every detail of the day when everything changed. Lucia left home to meet a friend who lived on the same street. A few houses away, "I'll be back soon, Mom," were her last words before disappearing forever. Time passed without clues, without answers, without a call, without a single hope. Paola tried everything. She searched the entire city, knocked on door after door, begged the police to prioritize the case. But over time, the investigations cooled, and the pitying looks from friends and colleagues became unbearable. The cruel truth that no one said out loud was that after so long, no one expected to find Lucia alive. But Paola couldn't accept that. She kept going, working, breathing, living the only way she knew how. Anesthetized by the coldness of the amphitheater where the dead didn't lie, didn't disappear, didn't take their hearts to an endless abyss. Today would be just another day, another body, another story interrupted. Before Paola opened the drawer, she heard the sound of the double doors of the amphitheater opening. "Dr. Morales, we brought a new body," the voice of one of the police assistants echoed in the cold room. 2 officers pushed the metal stretcher inside. The white sheet covered the young woman from head to toe. Paola sighed, preparing herself for what was to come. Every body had a story, a mystery, a last moment that someone had to decipher. And that was her job. "What happened?" she asked, taking the board with the preliminary report. "Nothing apparent," replied one of the officers, scratching the back of his neck. "No signs of assault, no signs of violence. They found her lying in a dark street, lifeless." Paola frowned. It was not unusual for a body to arrive without an obvious explanation. An accident, an assault, a crime of passion. There was always something, but this girl had simply died. She pulled the sheet back carefully, revealing the young woman's face, and then something inside her froze. The girl had delicate features, pale skin, long eyelashes, and lips slightly parted, as if they still wanted to say something before her last breath. For a moment, Paola felt a strange knot in her chest. There was something about this young woman that disturbed her, a familiar discomfort. She pushed the thought away. She couldn't let be carried away by her feelings. Her job demanded cold logic. But why were her fingers trembling? She scanned the board. There was no missing person report that matched her description. It was as if she didn't exist. Her eyes closed, her delicate features, her hair falling in fine strands over her forehead. She looked peaceful, but it wasn't just that. It was the way her mouth was slightly parted, as if she were about to call someone, as if she wanted to say something and couldn't. Paola felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen many bodies throughout her career, young people, old people, victims of tragedies, people who left behind families, loves, interrupted stories. But this girl made her doubt. Her gaze was caught on that face, and then a terrible feeling began to spread inside her. A memory, an intuition. She couldn't explain it. But there was something familiar about the expression on that young woman's face, like a distant echo, like a whisper, coming from a place she was trying to forget. Paola blinked several times, and took a step back. Why did she feel this way? Why did this girl, whom she had never seen before, seem familiar? Her instinct told her that this was no coincidence. She pushed those thoughts aside. She couldn't let herself be carried away by emotions. Her work demanded precision and concentration. With a long sigh, she put on her latex gloves, trying to push away that strange uneasiness. She picked up the scalpel and placed it on the young woman's pale skin. It was just another body, but when she tilted the blade to make the first incision, something fell. A sharp sound echoed on the metal table, breaking the silence. Paola stood still. What was that? She slowly lowered the scalpel and looked at the object that had slipped from the young woman's clothes. Her eyes widened. It was a small silver necklace with a moon-shaped pendant. The world around Paola disappeared. The amphitheater, the surgical instruments, the cold air conditioning, everything vanished. She knew that necklace too well. Her hands trembled as she picked up the piece with her gloved fingers. She couldn't do it. She couldn't. Her heart began to beat fast, almost painfully in her chest. Her breathing became irregular. Her eyes began to burn, because that necklace wasn't just a necklace. It was Lucia's necklace, the gift she had given her years ago, the same one Lucia wore every day, the same one she never took off her neck. Paola felt the ground disappear beneath her. The scalpel slipped from her hand, falling onto the table with a metallic clang. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. How had that necklace ended up with this girl? Her chest tightened as if something were crushing her ribs inside. That couldn't be real. She remembered perfectly the day she bought the necklace. She remembered the sparkle in Lucia's eyes when she opened the velvet box. "Mom, it's beautiful. Now you'll always have the moon with you, my love, even on cloudy days." Lucia wore that necklace every day. She never took it off. And now there it was, with another girl. Lucia and that girl were connected in some way, and Paola needed to find out how. Lucia had appeared a year ago, and now there in front of her, the only trace of her daughter that still existed was on the clothes of a stranger. That couldn't be a coincidence. But what did it mean? The tears wanted to come out, but Paola swallowed them hard, and for the first time in a year, Paola felt she was about to discover the truth. Paola never believed in signs. She never believed that fate left clues. But at that moment, looking at that little moon necklace, all the logic in the world seemed to vanish. If that was just a coincidence, then life was too cruel. Or maybe Lucia was trying to tell her something. She squeezed the necklace between her fingers, trying to control her breathing. Paola felt the blood rush to her head. With trembling fingers, she took her cell phone out of her robe pocket and dialed a number she hadn't called in months, a number that had long meant hope. The phone rang twice before a hoarse voice answered. Fuentes. Paola took a deep breath, trying to organize her words, but they came out rushed and urgent. "Miguel, I need you now." There was a pause on the other end. "Paola, what happened?" She closed her eyes tightly, feeling her throat tighten. How to explain? How to say in a few words that something was wrong, very wrong? "It's about Lucia." Silence. The air seemed to grow heavier. "Where are you?" Miguel asked, his voice now more alert. "Morgue, I'm on my way." The call was cut off. Paola stood still, staring at the screen of her cell phone. For a moment she tried to calm her breathing. Miguel Fuentes was more than an inspector. He was her friend. More than that, he was the only one who really tried to find Lucia for months. Miguel looked for clues and investigated similar disappearances. He never treated Lucia's case like just another closed case. But over time, when no clues appeared, he was transferred to another area and the case went cold. Paola never blamed him for that. But now, with the necklace trembling in her hands, she knew she needed him back. Minutes later, The morgue doors swung open. Miguel rushed in, his brown eyes scanning the room, trying to understand the gravity of the situation before she could say a word. "Tell me what's going on," Miguel said firmly, but with a concerned tone. Paola took a deep breath and held out her hand, showing him the silver necklace. "Miguel, this necklace," her voice broke. "It's my daughter's." For a moment, Miguel just looked at her, and Paola saw when his face became serious. She understood. She knew this changed everything. She looked at the young woman lying motionless on the stretcher. "How did you end up with this girl?" Her voice trailed off at the end. Miguel looked up at her. There was something different in his expression, now, as if at that moment, he understood that they were facing something much bigger than they had imagined. He took a deep breath and opened the folder of reports, searching for answers that might not exist. But there was something there, and he needed to find it. The papers in his hands rustled as he quickly turned the pages. The hurried handwriting of the officers who had handled the case filled the reports. But no matter how hard he looked, there was nothing. Nothing that explained who this girl was. Nothing that said where she came from. Paola crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the young woman. Her face was so peaceful, but also so empty. Miguel broke the silence. They found her lying in a dark street near downtown. No witnesses. No security cameras captured the moment she appeared there. He turned another page, reviewing the preliminary examinations for violence. No visible injuries. She was simply there, Miguel concluded incredulously. Paola frowned. "This doesn't make sense." Miguel nodded. "She wasn't abused. She has no signs of aggression, no bruises, no cuts, nothing to indicate that anyone hurt her." He closed the folder slowly, thoughtfully. She just seemed lost. That word hung in the air, floating between the two of them. Lost. Paola felt a chill run down her spine, as if Lucia were alone somewhere, lost. She looked at the necklace in her hands once more, squeezing the chain tightly. "Does this mean she was with my daughter, Miguel?" Somehow these two were in the same place. Miguel took a deep breath. "We have to find out where." Miguel opened his laptop and began typing quickly into the police system, his fingers tapping the keyboard hurriedly. Paola watched his every move. Every second of waiting seemed like an eternity. The young woman's name had been recorded in the report as Camila Ramirez, but no one knew if it was real. The agents had found some documents in her pocket. A crumpled document, a public transportation card, a torn piece of paper with a number that was almost erased, but nothing matched the official records. "This doesn't make sense," Miguel muttered, staring at the screen. Paola felt her stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" He turned the monitor toward her. The screen showed a single sentence in red letters. "No record found." "Her name does not exist in the system," Miguel explained, confused. "Nothing. No hospital admissions, no school enrollment, no address, no missing person report." He turned another page of the report as if he were looking for something that simply wasn't there. "No family has looked for her." Paola swallowed hard. How was it possible? Such a young girl with no one. She looked at the motionless body on the autopsy table. Her skin looked even paler under the cold light of the coroner. Who was she? And then a chilling thought crossed Paola's mind. Miguel, what if she wasn't registered because she was never meant to be found? Miguel closed the folder slowly, feeling the weight of those words. "Are you saying that someone wanted her to disappear?" Paola looked at the moon necklace she still held in her hands. "I'm saying that she could be the only clue we have about Lucia. Because that girl didn't just appear out of nowhere. And if no one was looking for her, it was because someone wanted her to remain missing." She walked away from Miguel, ignoring the confusion and fear growing inside her, and walked back to the autopsy table. The necklace was still clenched between her fingers, but for a moment she tried to put it out of her mind. She needed to concentrate. That girl could be trying to tell a story. Paola looked at the young woman's hands. Her fingers were slightly stiff from rigor mortis, but details that had previously gone unnoticed were now visible. And then she saw it. The nails were worn, broken in places, some even bleeding. It was as if she had fought, as if she had tried to hold on to something, to cling to something so she wouldn't be taken away. That thought sent a chill down Paola's spine. Where had this girl been before she appeared on that street? She looked up at Miguel, who was already observing everything with a serious expression. "Look at her fingernails," Paola said in a low voice. But there was a weight to it that he recognized immediately. Miguel stepped forward and examined the girl's fingers. She had tried to grab onto something. Paola felt a lump in her throat, or someone else's. Her eyes filled with tears. How many times in recent months had she imagined Lucia struggling to get home, trying to escape, trying to call her, trying to find a way out? And now, in front of her, was a young woman with clear signs that she had also tried to resist, but had failed. Paola closed her eyes, swallowing the pain as if it were a child. She refused to believe that this would also be Lucia's story. She wouldn't accept it. She squeezed the moon necklace tighter and looked at Miguel. She was being held somewhere. Miguel, this wasn't an accident. Someone knows what happened to her. Paola closed her eyes for a moment, trying not to imagine, but the images came. A girl trapped in a dark place, her fingers sliding down a closed door, scratching the wood, trying to open it. The desperation, the fear, the silent crying that no one heard. And then, absolute silence. Paola swallowed hard. How many times had she herself woken up in the middle of the night, suffocated by nightmares like this? How many times had she imagined Lucia in the dark, alone, trying to get home? That girl died trying to resist something terrible. And if Lucia had gone through the same thing, her heart began to beat faster, because now she was sure this was no coincidence. And that girl was not a stranger, just anyone. She was a piece of a puzzle that Paola desperately needed to put together. But no matter how much all of this tore her apart inside, nothing hurt her more than the silver chain trembling between her fingers. She looked at Luna's necklace, its metallic shine reflecting under the cold light of the room. That necklace that Lucia never took off. Paola clutched the object in the palm of her hand, her eyes filled with tears. How did that necklace end up with that girl? What did it mean? Paola felt an icy chill down her spine. What if that necklace was there because Lucia was no longer in this world? The thought almost made her fall to her knees. She whispered to herself that she couldn't think about that she wasn't going to accept that. Paola dried her eyes, took a deep breath, and looked at Miguel. We need to find out who she was. We need to find out where she was. She looked at the body once more while Miguel read the medical reports. She just stared at the girl's body, trying to understand how someone so young could simply disappear from the world without a trace, until Miguel broke the silence. There's really nothing in the system, but there is something. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. That girl was extremely malnourished. Paola, her iron and vitamin levels were probably dangerously low. Her body collapsed from severe anemia. Paola felt a chill run down her spine. So she died of hunger. Miguel felt slowly, probably. But let's order some tests. Paola felt a lump tighten her throat. To die like that, so slowly, so quietly. How many nights did that girl spend feeling her stomach empty? How many times must she have cried, her body weak, without the strength to get up? And above all, where had she been all this time? Paola took a deep breath, trying to contain the wave of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. The young woman in front of her was not. She was a girl who lived on the street. She had a necklace. Lucia's necklace. It came from somewhere, from captivity, from a place where she should never have been found. Paola looked at Miguel. Her voice was low, laden with a weight that he recognized immediately. Someone had kept her locked up. Miguel. Someone controlled what she ate, where she slept, where she lived. Otherwise, she would have asked someone for help. Miguel said nothing. He just closed the report with a sharp snap, and the silence in the amphitheater was piercing. Paola scanned the young woman's body once more, looking for any detail, anything that might give her an answer. Then something caught her attention. There was a small lump inside the pocket of the girl's faded blouse. With trembling fingers, she carefully pulled the fabric and found a piece of paper, crumpled and dirty, as if it had been held for a long time, or squeezed like a piece of chewing gum wrapper. Her eyes widened. That was the only thing the girl had with her. In addition to the crumpled document, there was a public transportation card and a torn piece of paper with a number that was almost erased. That piece of paper went unnoticed by the police. Paola swallowed hard. It was important. She took a deep breath and unfolded the note. The handwriting was irregular, written in a hurry, the letters crooked and issued and smudged. But you could read half an address. Her heart raced. That was a clue. Perhaps the only clue she had. If that girl came from the same place as Lucia, then Lucia could be there. Paola held the crumpled paper between her fingers as she walked toward Miguel. Her mind was full of questions, but her voice came out firm and determined. This girl had Lucia's necklace. This address is the only clue I have. Miguel took the note, analyzing the numbers and letters quickly, but he already knew where it was. It wasn't a familiar place. He looked up at Paola. What he saw in her wasn't just a desperate mother. It was a woman who wouldn't stop until she got her daughter back. The inspector sighed and looked at the young woman on the table once more. Camila died trying to get there, trying to leave this clue for someone, trying to do the right thing. Miguel took a deep breath and put the paper in his pocket. Then he made a decision. Let's go there. Paola felt a chill run through her body, because that sentence changed everything. She wasn't alone after a year of silence, a year of pain, a year of unanswered questions. She was finally closer. Lucia, hang in there. Mom is coming for you. The road was long and winding. The car cut through the worn asphalt, moving away from the city toward the unknown. Paola held the crumpled piece of paper tightly, as if it were a thread connecting her to her daughter. The address the police officer had given them led them to a remote neighborhood where the silence seemed heavier, denser. The houses became scarcer, the lampposts more distant. The feeling that they were going to a place that did not want to be found grew stronger and stronger, and then they finally arrived. The car stopped a few meters from the rusty gate. The engine was turned off, but the silence that followed was not peaceful. A tall iron gate closed with rusty padlocks. Behind it, a gray, lifeless building. The rusty sign indicated the name of the place. Casa Esperanza, a home for young people. But there was no hope there. The walls were too high, the windows too small, the silence too loud. Paola swallowed hard. Is it an orphanage? She asked, frightened and doubtful. Miguel looked around, analyzing the structure. It seems so. But Paola knew that wasn't just that. There was something wrong with that place. Very wrong. She expected to hear children's laughter. She expected to see children playing in the courtyard, running through the corridors, but all she found was silence. And that silence said more than any words. Lucia's necklace was still clenched in her hand, and in her chest, an unshakable instinct screamed, "My daughter is here." She didn't know how, she didn't know why, but she knew. She took a few hesitant steps and went. That's when she noticed the cameras. There were at least 4 strategically placed on the gate, and in the corners of the building, watching me, small, cold, emotionless black eyes, observing, recording. Paola frowned. This doesn't look right. Miguel, who was analyzing the structure beside her, crossed his arms. It doesn't look like a normal orphanage. Paola agreed. She knew it wasn't. Closed doors, drawn curtains, absolute emptiness. Something is wrong here. Miguel nodded slowly. He felt it too, and that certainty made him adjust his badge on his chest and step forward. The iron gate groaned when Miguel hit it hard, the sound echoing throughout the silent courtyard. Paola stood motionless beside him, her heart racing. For a moment, nothing happened, but then a shadow moved behind the main door of the building. Paola held her breath. The door opened slowly, and a stern woman appeared on the threshold, her small cold eyes analyzing Miguel and Paola from head to toe. Her face showed no emotion, but her rigid posture made it clear that she did not like visitors. She crossed her arms. "We don't receive visitors without an appointment," she said in a sharp, dry voice, without patience or courtesy, as if whatever was happening inside could not be interrupted. Paola felt a chill run down her spine. The woman's gaze was empty. It was not the gaze of someone who cared for children. It was the gaze of someone who was hiding something, and Paola knew it was something terrible. Miguel kept his expression neutral, but Paola noticed when he reached for his badge. Miguel raised the badge to the woman's eye level. Inspector Miguel Fuentes, Chicago City Police. The woman didn't even blink, but Paola saw her jaw tense a little more. Miguel continued, "We are investigating the death of a young woman named Camila." He took a photo of the dead girl out of his pocket, the last image of her before she was taken to the coroner. Time seemed to stand still in that moment. Camila's photo was right there in front of the woman's eyes. It was impossible not to recognize that face. The pale skin, the tousled hair, the slightly parted lips, the face of a girl who once had life and was now dead. Paola didn't blink or breathe because she saw for a brief second, before the woman could hide it, before she could disguise it, that she turned pale, a slight tremor in her fingers, a moment of hesitation on her lips, a swallow that even she didn't notice. But Paola saw it. She knew Camila, and if she knew Camila, then she knew the truth. Miguel also noticed it. The tension in his body increased. His gaze became more intense, studying every detail of the woman's expression. But then, as if something inside her had flipped a switch, the mask returned to its place. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and her expression hardened. "There's no one here with that name." Her voice came out firm, but a little too late. Paola no longer believed anything that woman said. Camila had been there. And if Camila had been there, Lucia had been there too. Or was she still there? Paola's heart beat faster. Her hands gripped the necklace so tightly that the chain almost cut into her skin. She could feel it. She could feel it in her bones. Lucia was in there. She had to be. She opened her mouth to answer, to shout that she was lying, but then something happened at the top of the building. It moved quickly, in a second, maybe less, but Paola saw it. Her eyes were drawn to the second floor, to one of the windows, the only one without thick curtains covering the glass, and behind it a shadow, a small, light figure, a silhouette that appeared for an instant as if trying to see what was happening outside, and then disappeared. Paola's heart stopped as she stared, but there was no more movement. Her whole body trembled. When she grabbed Miguel's arm tightly, her voice came out almost soundless, but charged with something that burned like fire. "My daughter is in there." Miguel turned his face toward her. He saw her wide eyes, the tears she was holding back, the pain mixed with hope. And in that moment, he didn't need proof. He believed her, because when a mother says she knows where her child is, she knows, and nothing else matters. Miguel didn't blink. He felt the way Paola was squeezing his arm. He felt the urgency, the desperation, the raw and undeniable truth in her voice. She knew. And if Paola knew, he believed her. He turned to look at the woman at the door, who remained rigid, trying to hide her nervousness. "We want to come in, now." Miguel's voice was firm and definitive. The woman didn't move. "I already told you, sir. We don't receive visitors without an appointment." Miguel narrowed his eyes. Paola, at his side, held her breath. The woman was resisting, which only confirmed that something was wrong. Very wrong. Then Miguel took out his badge and held it up so she could see it clearly. "This is not a request. It's an order." The woman tensed up. For a moment, Paola saw fear cross her face because she knew. She knew she could no longer prevent what was about to happen. The clock ticked away the seconds in the heavy silence that followed. She knew she couldn't block a police order, not without raising suspicion, so with a forced sigh, she reached for the huge padlock on the gate. "All right," her voice came out harsh, almost resentful. "But you'll see that there's nothing wrong here. Anything wrong here." Paola didn't believe a single word. The woman turned the key, and with a metallic click, the lock opened. The iron gate creaked as it moved. She and Miguel were already inside, but nothing there seemed right. The air was heavy, laden with the smell of disinfectant and dampness. The white tile floor creaked under their footsteps, and the walls were smooth, too pale. It was as if someone wanted to erase any trace of life in that place. Paola looked around, expecting to see toys scattered about, colorful murals, something that looked like a home for children. But there was none of that. No color, no joy, no life. Miguel stopped beside her, his gaze tense. He noticed it too. This place was not an orphanage, not a real one. They walked down the main hallway where identical doors lined both sides, all closed, all locked. Paola's stomach churned. Why? The orphanage had no outdoor courtyard, no large windows, nothing that allowed a view of the outside world. And then she heard it. Light footsteps, stealthy movements, small muffled whispers. Paola held her breath. There were children there, but they weren't playing or laughing. They were hiding. Miguel stopped in front of one of the doors and held the handle, trying to turn it. It was locked. And then, from inside, came an almost imperceptible sound, a low, fearful whisper, and the only thing she could understand was, "We can't talk." Paola felt her chest tighten, her heart race, and suddenly everything became clear. The children weren't there to be cared for. They were there to be erased, each of them locked up, separated, silenced. Paola's blood ran cold. What if Lucia was behind one of those doors? What if she was trapped there, waiting for a rescue that never came? Anger grief rose in her throat, and Miguel turned to the director, his gaze sharp as a knife. "What is this place?" The woman crossed her arms, but her posture was more rigid. She felt she was losing control of the situation. "It's just a home for children without families." Paola took a step forward, her voice coming out louder than she expected. "This is not a home. This is a prison." The director did not respond. "Why are the children locked up?" The woman did not hesitate or stuttered, but Miguel noticed how her shoulders tensed. "It's to maintain order," she replied, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Miguel exchanged a quick glance with Paola. "Maintain order?" Paola felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of orphanage locked children in rooms? Miguel crossed his arms without taking his eyes off the director. Order. Locking them up as if they were prisoners. The woman took a deep breath as if she were losing her patience. They go out to the playground and the dining room in the morning, and at the end of the afternoon. She took a step forward. "But we have rules." There was something in the way she said it that made Paola feel a lump in her throat. Rules. The director continued. Rules of coexistence, behavior, and schedule. There was a strange weight in her voice, a coldness, an authority that did not seem to come from someone who cared for children. Paola could not hide what she was feeling. Her gaze was pure disgust and indignation. And if they break those rules... The director lifted her chin. They don't break them. The answer was quick and definitive. Paola felt anger burning inside her. How many times had Lucia broken rules at home? How many times had she laughed too loudly, spoken when she shouldn't have, run without looking back? How many times had she simply been a child? And what happened to those children when they spoke out of turn, when they cried at night, when they begged to go home? Paola knew the answer. It was written on the pale walls of that place, in the muffled whispers, and above all, in the eyes of every child behind those doors. Miguel took a step forward, his gaze now pure steel. "Open one of those doors, now," he said. The principal hesitated, and at that moment Paola knew they were closer to the truth than ever before, and the truth was about to explode. Paola didn't wait. Instinct screamed inside her louder than any logic, louder than any words. She advanced through the hallways, ignoring the director's cold stare, ignoring Miguel's hurried footsteps behind her. She needed to see if Lucia was there, if she was really there. She needed to find her. Her hands trembled as she passed each door. Small reinforced glass windows in the center of the wooden doors closed. She looked inside each one, and what she saw broke her heart. Children, but not as they should be. They weren't playing, they weren't smiling, sitting on hard beds, eyes downcast, small, thin bodies. And in silence, Paola felt her throat close up. What had they done to them? And what had they done to Lucia? She quickened her pace, her eyes wild, scanning every window until, at the end of the hallway, she saw her in the small window. There was only one girl, alone. The other doors had pairs of children, but that one, that room, held only one. Paola stopped, her heart pounding, her body frozen. For a second, her eyes fixed on the girl sitting on the edge of the bed, so thin, so pale, so fragile, her head bowed, her long hair falling over her shoulders, small shoulders that Paola knew better than anything else in the world. Lucia. The name exploded inside her before her mind could form a coherent thought. Lucia, Lucia, Lucia. Paola's legs gave way, and she held onto the wall to keep from falling. Was it her, after a year, after sleepless nights, after despair, fear, guilt, loneliness, after thinking of 1,000 endings, 1,000 tragedies? After all, there, in front of her eyes, sitting on that cold bed with her head bowed, was her daughter Lucia. She was alive. Her feet seemed glued to the floor, her mind unable to comprehend that this was real. Lucia was there. Not in a dream, not in a memory. There in front of her, her daughter, alive. So small in that thick gray uniform. For a whole year, Paola wondered where Lucia would be, if she would still be there, if she cried every night, if she called out to her in the dark, if someone hurt her, if she still remembered her home, if she remembered her. And now, looking at that delicate face, Paola saw that Lucia had the same look she had when she was a child and got lost in the supermarket, a look mixed with fear and hope, a look of someone who wants to believe they found her, but is afraid of dreaming. Lucia still didn't know if this was real. Lucia blinked several times, trying to understand what she was seeing in front of her. What her eyes were telling her was impossible. She pressed her fingers against the hard sheets, feeling the rough fabric under her trembling hands. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt. She didn't move. She didn't dare move. Because if she moved, maybe everything would disappear. Maybe it was just another dream, another illusion her mind created to endure another night locked in there. But then her eyes met Paola's, and there, in that desperate, loving gaze, Lucia knew. It was her. It was real. And when the truth finally hit her, a single sound escaped her trembling mouth, filled with a whole year of fear, pain, and longing. "Mama!" Her voice broke Paola in two. It was a different voice, weaker, more frightened, but it was her daughter's voice, the voice she had waited a whole year to hear again. Paola's tears fell uncontrollably. She wasn't going to wait any longer. She wasn't going to waste another second because her daughter was alive, and she was going to take her away now. Paola didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She didn't reason. She just acted, her hands trembling and desperate. They found the cold door handle and turned it forcefully, not caring if it was locked, not caring if anyone would try to stop her. But the moment the door opened, everything around her disappeared. The amphitheater, the investigations, the pain she had carried for 12 whole months. The world was reduced to one thing. Lucia was there in front of her, her daughter more fragile, paler, thinner, but alive. The impact of seeing her again was so overwhelming that for a second, Paola forgot how to breathe. Her knees buckled, her heart raced, and the tears she had held back for so long finally came out. Uncontrollably, she ran towards Lucia, as if the ground beneath her feet did not exist, as if the entire universe had bent for that single moment. Lucia was still in shock, her eyes wide open, her body motionless, as if she hoped it was all just a cruel dream, as if any sudden movement could make it disappear. But then, when she felt the impact of her mother's embrace, she knew it was real. Paola's scent, the warmth of her body, the strength of her arms holding her with all the love and desperation in the world. Lucia broke down in that instant, and everything inside her collapsed at once. Paola sobbed, clinging to her daughter as if she would never let her go again, as if she could protect her from the time that had passed, from the suffering, from the fear that had devoured her for an entire year. Her hands ran through the girl's hair, over her face, her shoulders, too thin. She needed to feel her. She needed to be sure it was real. How many times had she dreamed of this? How many times had she woken up in the middle of the night, feeling her arms empty and her chest crushed by endless despair? My love, now you are safe." Her voice came out broken by sobs, choked by everything she could never say. Lucia, in her mother's arms, cried as if her fragile body could no longer bear so much pain. Her tears were violent, uncontrollable, laden with everything that had been taken from her for months. She waited for months, believing she would never return home. But now, she was in her mother's arms, and in that moment, for the first time in a whole year, she felt safe. Paola held her daughter tightly, as if she wanted to put the broken pieces of the past back together, as if she could make up for every day, every night, every second that had passed without her. Lucia trembled, curled up against her mother's chest like a little girl seeking refuge after a nightmare. Tears ran down both their faces, heavy, laden with everything that had been lost in that year of silence, fear, and pain. But then, as Lucia's sobs subsided, the girl slowly lifted her face, her eyes red and tear-filled, and looked at her mother with an expression that broke Paola in a different way. Lucia's voice came out weak, laden with something more than the emotion of the reunion. There was a mixture of expectation and anguish, a fragile hope that seemed to hang on the edge of an abyss. Camila did it. She found you. She said she would find you. Time seemed to freeze. Her daughter's words echoed in Paola's mind like distant thunder, and in that instant, she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Camila. Her name sounded like a sharp knife cutting into her chest. Camila was not just a stranger who appeared dead on that cold night in the theater. Camila was not just a clue. Camila was the only reason Paola was there now, holding her daughter in her arms. Paola's throat closed up, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. How could she respond to that? How could she tell her daughter that the only person who tried to save her didn't make it in time? That Camila fought, that she tried, that she resisted as long as she could, but she didn't get to see the end of that story. Lucia kept looking at her mother, waiting for an answer, still clinging to a thread of hope, still wanting to believe that Camila was okay, that everything had turned out well for both of them, that somehow they could get out of there together. It was an innocent hope, a hope that did not yet know the truth, that did not imagine the weight of the answer Paola would have to give. The girl hoped to hear that Camila was okay, that she had made it, that it had all been worth it, and Paola wanted to be able to say that. She wanted to be able to lie. She wanted to look her daughter in the eyes and tell her that Camila was outside waiting for them, that everything had turned out well, that they would all go home together. But the truth was there, burning in her chest, crushing the air in her lungs, squeezing her throat until she almost choked. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find the words, trying not to break down in front of her daughter, but there was no easy way to say it. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Lucia still waiting, her lips trembling, and her breath coming in gasps of anticipation. "Yes, my love, she found me." Paola's voice came out low, laden with a pain that Lucia did not yet fully understand. She did everything she could. Lucia held her breath, waiting for the rest of the answer, waiting for what would come next. Paola swallowed hard, but could not resist the sparkle in Lucia's eyes, disappeared instantly, as if someone had blown out a candle in the middle of the night, as if something inside her had broken irreparably, as if for the first time since it all began. She understood that Camila would not return. Lucia didn't need to hear anything else before her mother finished speaking, before the words took shape completely. The truth had already hit her straight in the chest, and the light of hope in her eyes went out immediately, and the emptiness on her face was even worse than tears. The air seemed to disappear, and for a moment she stood motionless, just absorbing the overwhelming pain that had just fallen upon her. But then, like a dam that suddenly breaks, Lucia collapsed. Her body lost its strength, her shoulders slumped, and tears flowed as if they were being torn from within. "No, no, no!" Her voice came out weak at first, like a broken whisper, but soon it became a dull moan filled with a despair that Paola felt in every cell of her body. The sound of Lucia's pain was something she would never forget. It was a raw, visceral lament, a mixture of sadness, disbelief, and guilt, as if her mind refused to accept that Camila would never return. Paola held her daughter tighter, burying her face in her disheveled hair, breathing in the scent that had passed a whole year, afraid she would never feel it again. She kissed her on the head, her lips pressed against her cold locks, trying to comfort her, trying to calm her down. But how do you calm something that has been broken in that way? Paola's own tears fell uncontrollably, wetting her daughter's hair, mixing with her desperate crying. "My love." Paola's voice came out low and trembling, full of a love that had only grown in the time they had been apart. But there were no right words for that moment, because no words would be enough to heal that pain. Lucia trembled in her mother's arms, her fragile body shaken by sobs, as if each tear took a piece of her with it. The pain was so strong that it seemed physical, as if something were squeezing her chest, crushing her lungs, preventing her from breathing. She promised me or told me she would come back. The words came out broken, drowned in tears, laden with a suffering that Paola never wanted to see in her daughter. Lucia held Luna's necklace tightly against her chest, her little fingers clutching the pendant as if trying to bring her back. The weight of Camila's broken promise of sacrifice, the cruel reality that her best friend could not survive, crushed Lucia with a pain that she still didn't know how to bear. Seeing her like this, feeling her fragile body tremble in her arms, Paola just wanted to pull her out of that nightmare and never let her go, to hold Lucia close. After so long, it should have been the happiest moment of her life. But seeing her daughter break down in tears, devastated by Camila's death, made her chest tighten in a way no mother should ever feel. How could she comfort Lucia when she herself didn't know how to deal with that pain? How could she tell her that everything would be okay when the only reason Lucia was still alive was because she hadn't had the same chance to escape? Paola closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back her own tears, but they fell hot down her face, mixing with her daughter's. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to speak because Lucia needed to hear those words, even if they hurt. Camila was very brave, daughter. She led us to you. She never gave up on you. She brought my little girl back to me. Lucia, be strong. Her small body trembled against Paola's. The memory of Camila, of her strength, of her promise, mingled with the heartbreaking pain of knowing she would never return. Lucia clutched Luna's necklace tighter to her chest, her small fingers clinging to the charm, as if holding it could bring Camila back. She asked me to do it, the day she escaped. Her voice came out trembling, broken, filled with such intense emotion that it made Paola hold her breath. She said to me, "If I don't come back, your mom will find you. Anyway, I'm going to give her the necklace." Paola felt a chill run through her body. Camila knew, even though she knew she might never reach her, even with her weak body, even without certainty, she trusted that Paola would find Lucia somehow, even before her escape, even before her fate was sealed. Camila already knew she was doing this for something bigger than herself. And now, there, holding Lucia in her arms, feeling Luna's cold necklace between her fingers, Paola understood that this girl had been the hope that kept her daughter alive, and that even in death, it was she who had given Lucia her home back. Paola closed her eyes, feeling the tears burn her face, hot and heavy, laden with a weight she knew would never go away. Lucia cried weakly in her mother's arms, her small, fragile body completely surrendered to the overwhelming pain that enveloped her. Her breathing was ragged, the sobs came uncontrollably, as if the sadness was breaking her inside. She couldn't accept it. She couldn't. "She died because of me, Mom." She wanted to go, even though she was sick, because I was sad. Her voice was almost but it carried so much weight that it broke Paola's heart once again. Lucia felt guilty. She believed that Camila only ran away because she saw her sad, because she wanted to comfort her, because she wanted to do something for her. She believed that if she hadn't shown her pain, Camila wouldn't have made that decision. But how could she have known, Lucia? How could she have imagined that her friend was planning something so big? Paola felt her chest tighten so much that she could barely breathe. She wanted to tell her that it wasn't her fault, that none of it was her fault, that Camila did what she did because of who she was. But how could she say that when Paola's own heart was shattered by the same pain? Camila left alone, facing the world with nothing but the hope of reaching Paola. And now she was no longer there to see the result of what she had done. Paola held Lucia's shoulders firmly, pulling her closer, forcing her to look into her eyes. Her eyes. There was so much pain in those small eyes, so much weight, so much guilt, as if she were carrying the whole world on her fragile shoulders. But Paola couldn't allow her daughter to carry a guilt that didn't belong to her. She couldn't let her sink into pain without understanding the truth. No, she died, because this place should never have existed. The words came out firm and confident, but full of a raw pain that Paola knew Lucia also felt. Camila didn't die because of you, daughter. Camila died because they put her in a place where children should not be, where no one cared if they lived or died. She died because this place destroyed everything it could except her courage. And now we are going to end this. We are going to get justice for her. Lucia continued to cry, but something in her eyes changed. The weight of guilt was still there, but now mixed with something new. A spark of understanding, a silent rage, a deep sadness that was beginning to transform into something different. Camila died fighting. Camila didn't want Lucia to be trapped there forever. Camila believed that Paola would come, and Paola came. Lucia took a deep breath, still trembling, but nodded slowly. I want to see her at least once. Paola felt her heart break a little more. How could she deny her daughter that? How could she prevent her from saying goodbye to the only person who protected her, when no one else did? She knew that seeing Camila's body would be a hard blow, but she also knew that Lucia needed that goodbye. Camila deserved to be remembered. She deserved for someone to hold her hand, for someone to tell her that she was not forgotten, that her struggle was not in vain. Paola ran her hand through her daughter's hair, brushing away the strands wet with tears. Let's go see her, my love, together. And at that moment, Lucia knew she was no longer alone. Hours later, the dark and heavy sky reflected the intensity of what Paola and Lucia were about to face. After many calls and discussions with his superiors, Miguel obtained authorization for Lucia to go to the amphitheater. She needed that moment. She needed to see Camila one last time, because there was no other way to fully understand what had happened, to accept the truth, and to move on without carrying the weight of this. Paola held her daughter's hand as they walked down the cold hallway of the amphitheater. Lucia's steps were slow and hesitant, as if her body knew what was about to happen and was trying to avoid each step. The silence around them was absolute, broken only by the girl's ragged breathing. When they reached the room, Miguel opened the door and took a step back, allowing Lucia to enter first. In the center of the room, illuminated by a cold, artificial light. There was a stretcher covered with a white sheet. Lucia stopped there in front of it, her eyes fixed on the fabric that hid her friend's face. Her small body trembled slightly. She didn't move or blink. It seemed as if her mind was trying to understand that behind that piece of fabric, Camila was no longer there. Paola felt her daughter's grip on her hand weaken, as if Lucia lost her strength at the very moment that reality finally crushed her. Time seemed to have stopped. Every second stretched out. Then, as so slowly, Miguel pulled the sheet down, revealing the pale, serene face of the girl who had risked everything to save her best friend. Lucia saw, and the moment she saw, her knees gave way. Her body couldn't take it. Her mind couldn't take it. Her heart, so young and already so wounded, couldn't take it. Paola held her before she fell to the floor, pulling her close, carrying her weight, trying to be the strength that Lucia needed at that moment. But nothing she said or did would ease her daughter's pain. Camila was there, but at the same time, she was gone. She wouldn't open her eyes. She wouldn't smile. She wouldn't squeeze her hand back. She wouldn't say that everything would be okay, because it wasn't. She couldn't do it. With weak legs and a trembling body, Lucia let go of her mother and took a step forward. Her fingers hesitated before touching Camila's hand, cold, motionless, without the life that had always been inside her. The world seemed to collapse around her, when the contact confirmed that her friend really wasn't coming back. The tears returned, but now they were quieter, deeper, as if Lucia were losing a part of herself that would never be whole again. "You saved me. Now I promise I will save other children like you tried to do." The voice came out almost soundless, but laden with a weight that even Lucia did not fully understand at that moment. Paola and Miguel exchanged a glance, and in that instant, they knew exactly what they had to do. There were no more doubts, no more hesitation. Everything they had discovered, all the truths hidden behind those high walls and that oppressive silence, everything pointed to the only thing left to do. That place had to be destroyed, not just closed, not just reported. It had to be exposed. It had to fall so that no child would ever again go through what Lucia and Camila went through. Because Camila was no longer there to tell her story, but Lucia was, and now was the time to seek justice. Hours later, in the middle of the night, sirens broke the silence of the night. The patrol cars arrived quickly, and armed men got out. Without giving anyone time to react, the iron gate that had previously seemed impossible to cross was knocked down effortlessly, and in a matter of seconds, the police entered the orphanage. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the cold corridors. The doors that had previously kept defenseless children locked up were now forced open. The nightmare was finally coming to an end. Chaos broke out in a matter of seconds. Screams echoed through the halls. The employees tried to run, tried to erase evidence, tried to escape through the back door. But no one escaped. None of them would disappear. In the night, as if nothing had happened, as if the pain of those children were disposable, as if Camila's death could be forgotten. Not this time. Paola watched everything with her heart racing. They had achieved everything Camila fought for, everything Lucia suffered for, everything she herself never stopped fighting for. It was happening right before her eyes. The doors were open, the children were rescued, those responsible were handcuffed and taken to face the consequences of their crimes. That place would never lock anyone up again. But while everything was happening around her, Paola knew that this victory did not erase the pain. She knew that many of those children would never be the same, that nothing would bring Camila back. Camila. Lucia would always carry the scars of what she had experienced there. But she also knew something else. Her suffering would not be in vain. And at that moment, as she looked at the frightened faces of the children who were finally being freed, she knew she was fulfilling the promise she had made to her daughter. Camila was gone, but her act of courage was not forgotten, and now no one else would suffer in that place. The narrow corridors and rooms of that orphanage hid much more than anyone could imagine. As the police advanced, breaking locks, breaking padlocks, and opening doors that should never have been closed, the secrets of that prison began to reveal. In the dark and suffocating rooms, they found more small children. Frightened faces emerged from the shadows, large, sunken eyes, tired of waiting, tired of crying, tired of having hope. Some trembled, others cowered against the walls, instinctively protecting themselves as if they were used to being punished for the slightest movement. Many had not seen the light of day for months. Some were so young that they did not even remember what it was like to play outside. Inside, time did not exist, only fear. The police officer leading the operation crouched down, trying not to appear threatening. His tone was calm and patient, trying to reach those children who had been taught since they arrived there to expect nothing from anyone. "You are safe now. We are going to take you home." Silence hung heavy in the room. No child moved. None celebrated. None ran into the arms of the police officers as children rescued from a nightmare would do, because for them, This was just another empty promise. They had been taught not to trust, not to believe in pretty words, not to expect that someone would really come to get them out of there. How many times had they waited? How many times had they wished to hear exactly those words? But nothing changed. Paola watched the scene with a lump in her throat. Her heart broke when she saw those looks full of mistrust, full of fear, full of something that a child should never have to carry. They were so used to being invisible, to being silenced, that now even freedom didn't seem real to them. Seemed real. It was at that moment that she understood that the battle would not end there. It was not enough to get them out of that place. They needed to learn again what it meant to be safe, what it meant to have a home, a family, someone who would truly protect them. It was then that, at the back of the room, a child no older than 7 took a hesitant step forward. He looked at Lucia, who was still holding her mother's hand tightly. And in that instant, something changed. Because Lucia was one of them. She had been there. She had felt everything they felt, but now she was on the other side of the door. She was leaving. She was being rescued. And if someone had come for Lucia, maybe, just maybe, they had also come for them. A little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, stepped forward among the other children and narrowed her eyes, analyzing Miguel with a mixture of disbelief and recognition. Her face was dirty, her hair uncombed, and her body too thin for her age, but her gaze carried something that no one expected to see there. "Hey, you're the man from the TV." The whole room fell silent. Miguel frowned, momentarily confused. The other children looked at the girl and then at him, as if trying to decipher the moment, but the girl knew. Her eyes suddenly sparkled, as if something inside her finally made sense. She took another hesitant step, as if she was afraid that if she spoke too loudly, it would all disappear. Paola watched the scene without blinking, her heart racing. What did that girl mean? Who was she? But before anyone could ask, one of the police officers accompanying the operation opened his eyes in surprise when he saw the girl's face. "My God, Olivia!" Miguel froze. Her name echoed down the hallway, and in that instant, he knew. His heart raced even before he could process it. Completely. He had seen that face before on posters, in news reports, in missing persons bulletins. Olivia, the girl who disappeared 2 years ago without a trace, the girl that Miguel himself had tried to find, but whose clues always vanished into thin air. But she was there in front of him, alive, recognizing him from television because her father, the man who never stopped looking for her, spent hours watching the news, hoping for a miracle. And the miracle happened before Miguel could react. The police officer who had recognized her quickly stepped aside, picked up the radio, and transmitted the information to headquarters. Olivia's name was confirmed. In seconds, her father never stopped looking for her. Miguel felt a lump in his throat. How could he have imagined that in the middle of that operation, he would find one of the girls he had been trying to find for so long? His chest tightened when Olivia took another step. Her breathing was rapid, anxious, her gaze pleading, as if she were afraid that all of this was just another illusion. "Did you find my dad?" That question tore Miguel apart inside. He had never been a man who let himself be easily affected, but there, in front of that girl who had spent 2 years in the dark, waiting, trapped, not knowing if anyone was still looking for her, he couldn't hold back the tears. His body reacted before his mind, and in the next moment, he was kneeling in front of her, holding her small, cold hands in his. "Olivia, he never stopped looking for you, and now he's on his way." The girl's eyes filled with tears, and in an unexpected gesture, she threw herself into Miguel's arms, clinging to him as if he were the only anchor she had in the world. Miguel, a man accustomed to hardening himself against the tragedies he saw every day, collapsed to his knees and hugged her with force as if he were afraid she would disappear again. Paola brought a hand to her mouth, feeling her own tears run down her face. Lucia, at her side, watched the scene with a tight chest. She knew what that fear was like. She knew what it was like to feel forgotten, not knowing if anyone was still looking for you. But Olivia was not forgotten. Her father never stopped looking for her, and now, after 2 years of darkness, she would finally return home. The situation in the orphanage was no longer one of despair and fear, but of reunions. More parents arrived every minute, faces that were once full of pain, now bathed in tears of relief after so many years of waiting. Each hug was a piece of life returning, a cry of pain turned into emotion. Children who were once locked in darkness, forgotten by the world, now felt the warmth of their families' arms again, lives destroyed, finally rebuilt. Some mothers fell to their knees when they saw their children, sobbing and hugging them so tightly that without saying a word, they made it clear that they would never let them go again. Parents held their little ones close to their chests, unable to believe that the nightmare was over. And in the midst of it all, Miguel watched the scene, holding Olivia, who would not let go of his hand for anything in the world. Paola and Lucia stood away from the commotion, watching each reunion, each child returning home, each tear of happiness after years of pain. Lucia, still holding Luna's necklace between her fingers, took a deep breath and looked at her mother. Her face was still marked by tears, but there was something different in her expression, something that went beyond the pain, something that went beyond Camila's absence. Camila wanted this, for all the children to return home. Her voice was low, but full of certainty. Paola felt a lump in her throat because it was true. Camila didn't escape just to save herself. She escaped because she knew that if no one did anything, if no one tried, nothing would change. She was the first to try to open a door, and now, thanks to her, all the doors in that place were open. Paola squeezed her daughter's hand, feeling the fragile warmth of her little fingers against hers. And now they are coming back for her and for you. Lucia looked at the children being taken to the patrol cars, those running into their parents' arms, those who still hadn't found their families, but who now at least had a chance. And in that moment, something inside her calmed down. Camila was gone, but Camila changed everything. Her promise was not in vain. Her struggle was not forgotten. And now, because of her courage, no one else would remain trapped in that place. The director of the orphanage was led away in handcuffs in front of everyone, without the coldness she had before, without the false authority she had tried to impose. Her previously expressionless face now reflected the same fear that so many children had felt for years within those walls. Other employees were also arrested, direct accomplices to the atrocities that were committed there. The hallways, once filled with silence, were now filled with the sound of justice being served. Journalists surrounded the entrance, cameras broadcasting everything live, and within hours, the news was already shaking the country. The truth could no longer be hidden. The reports were devastating. Falsified documents, deleted records, children who had disappeared without any explanation. Some had families who never stopped looking for them. Others were truly orphans, but they were not treated with dignity. They were forgotten, locked up, silenced. But now those children would not be thrown into the system as if they were just numbers. They would be sent to an orphanage supervised by the authorities, a place where they would receive real care, where they would be seen, heard, and respected. They would never be invisible again. That night, far from the chaos of the streets and the turmoil of the police, Lucia finally lay down in her own bed, the soft mattress, the clean sheets, the security of being there next to her mother, in the only place where she should always have been. For a whole year, all she wanted was that moment. But now that she was back, now that the adrenaline had worn off and the weight of everything that had happened began to settle, a silent fear filled her chest. She turned to her mother, who was lying next to her, watching over her silently. Paola kissed her daughter's forehead and enveloped her in a warm, strong, secure embrace. Never again. And there, in her mother's arms, Lucia was finally able to close her eyes and sleep without fear. She was home. Months passed since that night. The orphanage was closed, those responsible were arrested, and the children who had once been forgotten now had a new chance to start over. The country was still talking about the case, about how a place that was supposed to protect the most vulnerable had become a silent prison, about how a girl had to give her own life for the truth to come out. But for Paola and Lucia, the battle was not only against the system, it was against time, against fear, against the pain of an absence that could never be filled. That morning, the wind was gentle and the sky was clear as the two walked through the cemetery. Lucia held her mother's hand tightly, Luna's necklace still hanging around her neck, the same one that kept her connected to Camila until the end. They stopped in front of a simple tombstone with no flowers around it, no constant visitors. Camila had no family to mourn her, but she had them, and they were there because they couldn't let her be forgotten. Paola knelt first, taking a small silver necklace identical to Lucia's out of her pocket. She carefully placed it on the cold tombstone. Camila never had a real home, never had anyone to protect her, but now she would have a symbol that would forever connect her to the girl she fought for until her last moment. Lucia watched the necklace sparkle in the sunlight, and through the tears that fell silently across her face, a small smile appeared. "I wish she were here." Paola took a deep breath, feeling her chest tighten as she watched her daughter trying to contain her pain, and at the same time, wanting to keep her friend in a beautiful place inside her. She squeezed Lucia's hand and, in an almost instinctive gesture, looked up at the sky. It is always there. It always will be. Lucia followed her mother's gaze, watching the clouds move slowly, the gentle wind touching her face, as if somehow Camila were there somewhere, blowing a final goodbye. When they turned to leave, Lucia held the moon necklace against her chest, feeling the cold metal, but also the warmth of Camila's memory, and for the first time in a year, she felt something different. It wasn't just nostalgia, it wasn't just pain, it was something new, something Camila left behind. When she took her last step out of that orphanage, it was hope. Well, if you were in their shoes. How far would you go to find the person you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your opinions. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now click on the video you see on the screen. Another touching, emotional, and at the same time, spine-chilling story awaits you.